Emma Willis is a model, DJ and TV presenter.
Look over your right shoulder at the end.
She's best known as the face of Big Brother. Emma grew up in Birmingham with her mum and dad and 2 sisters.
I always just wanted to work in a hospital, like that's what my mum did. But when I was 17, I had the opportunity to do a career that I never thought would ever happen to somebody like me.
Emma is married to Matt Willis from boy band Busted. They live in Hertfordshire with their 3 children.
I think we have quite an open house, and I feel like I grew up that way. There was always family members round the corner, in the garden, down the street. It was like that kind of typical old-fashioned working class. Everybody gets mucked in, everybody helps raise you.
Thank you.
Thank you. I come from a kind family, and I hope that that has been history repeating itself. I know nothing past my grandparents on either side. And I think I've got to a point in my life where I want to know more. I want to know more about me. I want to know more about where I came from. I don't know what's about to unfold, and I don't know what's about to happen. And hopefully, it's a positive outcome. I mean, we all want to have a nice story, right? So we're off to Birmingham because I figure the best place to start would be with my parents. So I know definitely my dad knew his grandparents. So I'm hoping they'll be able to tell me a little bit more than what I already know. Birmingham is my home, that's where I'm from. That's where my family are. You know, they're all still there. And I still have a bedroom in my parents' house. And they better never get rid of it. I think even getting the train, I love it because I hear home. Like I walk down a carriage and I hear a Birmingham accent and I'm like, I'm nearly home. I would really, really love it if we had deep-rooted ancestry in Birmingham. It would be quite special, I think. Okay.
Hello, yeah, how are you?
You all right, Thames?
Hello, Pop.
Good.
All right.
Yeah, good.
Good.
Good. We got some photos to show you.
Have you?
Yeah.
Oh, look, there's your mum and dad.
Yeah.
Oh.
I've seen enough of you. I think you and Nan and Grandad.
Bill and Edna. That's always how I remember her face. Always smiling.
I think that's how we all still see her, don't we?
Yeah, yeah,
And dancing.
yeah.
They were great-grandparents, weren't they?
Yeah.
Not as in great-grandparents, but they were.
Stop it.
They looked after you from when you was a baby,
Yeah.
from when you were born.
I know.
Yeah, they're so good.
But you don't really appreciate it until you get older. Sorry.
This is the wedding photo of your Nan and Grandad. That would have been in 1950.
He looks really dapper and she looks beautiful in, like, her dress, but they didn't really have anything, did they?
What? How do you
know
mean?
what I mean? Like, from a financial
Oh,
perspective.
no.
Yet they look
Yeah.
amazing on their wedding day.
Yeah. And obviously they didn't have a lot of money, but they're just ordinary working class. This here, that's my Nan. So that's your great-grandmother on
On my nan's side?
Nan's side, yeah.
That's Edna's mom, right?
Her name was Evelyn. They used to call her Eva.
Eva Gebhard.
Yeah.
You wouldn't want to mess with her, would you?
No.
When I look at that picture, I think of Peaky Blinders.
Yes. Well, that would have been the era, probably.
Do you know what I mean? She looks like she's a grafter, though.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Do you know anything about her husband? Your granddad? Do you remember him?
Yeah, he was around. We've got pictures of him. His name was Martin James Gebhard.
Oh, OK.
Giving Edna away on her wedding day.
Yeah. But by trade, he was a plasterer.
They're all quite handy then, really.
Yes.
Grafters. I like that. Do you know anything further back than him?
We've come across
Have you
one...
heard anything? Or...
We've just come across one photo, one older photo. This is Martin's mum. Her name was Alice Maud Gretton before she married. So that would be your great-great-grandmother.
What do we know about her?
We know she's from Birmingham. And I've got this envelope which has got more information on Alice.
Can I take these?
Yeah, yeah, sure, yeah.
Emma wants to explore her dad's side of the family. She's found a photo going back 4 generations to her 2 times great-grandmother, Alice Maud Gretton.
My dad's pulled it out the bag today because I didn't know he had pictures that went so far back. And I certainly have never seen the picture of Alice Gretton. So to find out if she originally comes from here and if our bloodline has Birmingham roots would be fantastic. Look at that, coffee art. I love it.
10 years not wasted.
Thank you very much. This is the envelope my dad gave me. Right, OK, so this is a marriage certificate. And Alice Maud Gretton married Martin Gebhard in 1878 in Aston, so they were in Birmingham. She was 18, she was young, and he was 26. Alice Gretton's father was James Gretton, who was a hair merchant. What's a hair merchant? Maybe we can find out a bit more about him, which would be my 3 times great-grandfather. OK. First name, James. Last name, Gretton, O-N. Place your ancestor might have lived, Birmingham. And keyword, which is my new favourite 2 words, hair merchant. Oh. James Gretton, horn and hair merchant, which makes me think he was a merchant of horns and hair. But then it says, and dealer in English and foreign sizing, which makes me think it's clothing. So I don't really understand the terminology. And the address that's on here for him is 61 Lower Trinity Street. It's obviously in Birmingham. Maybe I should go there and, I don't know, see if there's anything that can tell me any more.
Emma's on her way to see where her 3 times great-grandfather, James Gretton, was based.
For me, Birmingham's the best place in the world. Here she is, the ball ring. Such a funny building there. This is where all the pubs and clubs and bars are. And on the weekends, it's just a wash of people having the time of their life. Of course, I've never done that. Thank you.
Emma's arranged to meet Birmingham historian Carl Chin.
Hello.
How are you?
How are you?
I'm all right.
Yeah?
So you're in the back streets of Birmingham now?
I'm in the back streets of Birmingham.
Tell me what you want to know.
I want to know about James Gretton,
Yeah.
my 3 times great-grandfather.
OK. I wonder if you know who that is. That's
Got
James.
No idea. Is it?
Yeah.
No!
Yeah. That's James Gretton, your 3 times great-grandfather.
He's got my dad's eyes.
Has he?
Yeah, kind of heavy-lidded and little. All I know is that he either lived or worked on Lower Trinity Street.
Yeah. He lived here, down there on the right.
So he lived here or
Yeah, he lived
worked
down there.
here?
He
or
lived here.
and worked here?
He lived and worked here.
OK.
His street pattern's the same. The pub over there, the Wagon and Horses, was there in the 1850s.
So he might have been in that pub?
Yeah, it could well have done.
What I'm most baffled about is his job. When I read the documents about him, it said he was a horn and hair merchant, which I literally am like, what?
I found him at the age of 14. He's a brush maker.
Is he?
And he would have been making his brushes, probably for ladies, and the handle would be made of animal horn.
Right, OK,
Right.
so the horn was the handle and the
Yes.
hair was the brush?
Yeah, and the hair would have been horse's hair.
Oh, right, so
Right.
he made hairbrushes?
Yeah, and then...
Why didn't he just say that?
Now, later on, in 1851, he's moving away now from making brushes, but now he's becoming a merchant. He's buying and selling horn and hair. One of the other things that he does, he makes glue and size. Size is a watered-down version of glue. You
Yeah.
make glue with animal waste. Bits of skin, the noses, the ears, the tendons, yeah. Boil it, and you get the collagen.
Right,
And it's the collagen, the thick, gooey substance, that makes the glue.
right.
And he's typical of the small gaffers of Birmingham.
Gaffer? Is
Yeah,
he gaffer?
bosses.
Right,
He's a
was
small
he?
gaffer.
OK.
So don't forget, Birmingham is a city of 1,000 trades. That means there's a lot of small workshops as well as big factories.
Okay.
You could become a small gaffer if you're a skilled man. So he's doing well. I've got some documents to show you. This is a legal case that they're reporting.
Important nuisance information. James Bliss, Inspector of Nuisances for the Borough, preferred a charge against Mr James Gretton of Lower Trinity Street, Horn and Hair Factor, for carrying on that business in such a manner as to create a nuisance and be injurious to health.
So,
Is creating a nuisance kind of a big thing back then?
yeah, it's like, very much like environmental health. So
Oh,
you'd
right,
have
okay.
an inspector of nuisances, which Birmingham had.
In the mid-19th century, the population of Birmingham had almost doubled in 20 years. It was dirty and overcrowded. To clean up the city, nuisance inspectors were appointed to report on anything that posed a threat to public health.
So they're basically saying his business was not welcome and that it was a danger to people's health.
Now, can you imagine from
The smells coming from boiling all that
Yeah, animal
waste of animals, yeah.
Yeah, so a lot of people think they're going to get diseases. And they
Okay.
can get some diseases, Emma.
Right.
Anthrax,
What?
terrible disease that can be from infected animals. So a lot of people are complaining, but then a bit later on,
Mr John Suckling, for the defence, put in a memorial signed by more than 100 neighbours stating that Mr Gretton's business was not a nuisance nor injurious. Right, so there was a battle going on,
Yeah,
basically.
yeah.
Some of the community are saying that he's the cause of it, or the disease that's going around at the minute. The other half of the community are backing him, saying it's nothing to do with
Yeah.
him. So why would 100 neighbours support him, do you think?
it could be some of the poor who think he's providing work round here.
Right, OK.
You need jobs if you're
Yeah,
poor.
you do, yeah.
To help Emma understand why James Gretton's business caused a nuisance, Carl is taking her to some working-class Victorian houses, now preserved as a museum.
The amount of times I've walked
Yeah.
past here and not even known that this existed.
Now, your great-great-great-grandfather, you'd have had something like this yard. Probably 2/3 of this, I would have thought.
Yeah.
What we've got to understand is, can you see how tight it would have been?
Yeah.
People living on top of each other.
Overcrowded, yeah.
Yeah. And you can imagine, can't you, the smells coming from James's yard.
I'm getting a well-painted picture of work life
Yeah.
and what he did and the trouble he was kind of in at that
Yeah,
time in court.
yeah.
So what about his wife and the children?
Well, here's the 1861 census
Okay.
for him. Now,
1861.
right, so if we read along there...
Lower Trinity Street. So you've got James Gretton, who's the head. Mary.
And there's an A afterwards, which is probably for Anne.
So, all right, so Mary Ann Gretton, his wife.
Yeah, who is your 3 times...
great-grandmother.
And that is Mary.
Is that her?
That's Mary.
Oh, my God. Her hair looks nice, but then she's got enough brushes.
She's
probably.
got enough brushes.
Emma wants to find Mary Ann and James Gretton's daughter, her great-great-grandmother, Alice Maud Gretton. She was born in 1860, a year before this census was taken.
Clifford is 9. Son?
Yeah.
So he's got a son who's 9.
Yeah,
Agnes is 8.
yeah.
Clara is 6. And there's no Alice.
No Alice. This is another census return
OK.
for...
Heath Mill Lane. Abraham, Redding. Hannah, his wife.
Yeah,
And Alice Maud Gretton.
yeah.
So why was she living with Abraham Redding and Hannah Redding when she's only 1? Had they given her up? Would they have given her up?
Perhaps the mum, your great-great-great-grandmother, Mary...
Ann.
Yeah, is thinking, it's smelly, there's
Not
a
good
stench
for
here.
such a small
Yeah,
child.
all this hair. What do babies do when they're crawling
Yeah,
around?
they crawl and everything.
Yeah.
Their hands are in their mouths.
It might be that's the reason.
Right.
Health reasons.
So do you know anything about what happened next? What happened with the nuisance report?
Have a read of the London Gazette.
Yeah.
It's a notice to the court.
As directed by the Bankruptcy Act, name and description of the debtor as in the deed, James Gretton. So he's gone bankrupt.
Bankrupt.
Now he's fallen on harder times, he's gone bankrupt.
Yeah.
Alice isn't living with him.
Yeah.
What happened to the family next?
For that question to be answered, my advice would be to see a family historian.
OK. I kind of feel like he was doing quite well, but then it all just kind of fell away from underneath him. I don't know why they didn't have Alice living with them when she was so young. The only thing, actually, I can imagine as a mum of a 1-year-old myself was that for her own health and safety, she shouldn't have been in that environment. And from what we've heard with the nuisance report, that would kind of make sense. Because I can't see how you would otherwise not have your baby living with you. So now I want to know what happened to Alice. Did she go over to live with the rest of the family? That's what I need to know next.
Emma's come to Birmingham Library, where she's meeting genealogist Olivia Robinson.
Hi, Olivia. How you doing?
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you too. I don't know whether I should be excited or nervous. OK. So, so far I have got pictures of my 3 times great-grandparents, James and Mary Ann Gretton.
Excellent.
They had a baby who was 1 called Alice, who was my 2-time great-grandmother, who wasn't living with them. So what I don't know is what happened to the family and to Alice.
This is the census from 1871. So this takes you 10 years forward.
Yeah.
If you can see, here's Alice Gretton.
So she's back with them.
She's back.
Good. That's what I really wanted to happen. James Gretton, 44. Helena, wife, 42. Who's Helena? And where's Mary Ann?
What we haven't found is a marriage certificate for James and Helena. So I don't believe that they married. But
And
she
she's-
is living with him.
Right. Clifford, son, 20. Agnes, daughter, 18. Clara, daughter, 17. Alice, daughter, 10. Lily, who's 5.
This is the birth certificate for the little Lily at the bottom.
Okay. So, March 1868, Lily Helena Gretton, girl.
This is Lily, the child of James and Helena.
Do we know what happened to Marianne?
This may give you a clue as to what happened to Marianne in the same period.
So it's another birth certificate. 18th of July, 1867. Marianne, a girl. Name of father, Joseph Kilby.
Mm-hmm.
Name, surname of mother, Marianne Kilby. But she hasn't given Gretton. She hasn't mentioned it at all.
No. Marianne had her child with Joseph Kilby in London.
Oh, where are we?
St Martin in the Fields in the county of Middlesex. And Joseph Kilby may not have been aware that she was married or had another family.
She's a right one. Secret lives in London.
Yes, exactly. So, on the evidence we have,
illegitimate children.
there are 2 illegitimate children. Yeah.
Emma has learnt that her 3 times great-grandparents, James and Marianne, both met new partners and had a child with them.
Did things like this happen a lot, or is this quite a rare situation to kind of find both parties in?
I haven't seen anything quite like this where each married partner finds a new partner and has a child with them within a year. And it's not impossible and it's not unheard of. It's unusual. Rare. Yes, very unusual.
This is too much. The whole way down this line, the parents have always stayed together. My parents, my dad's parents, her parents. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Wow. What happened to James? Entry of death. Oh, no. This is what I didn't want to say. I like James. February 1899, James Gretton, male. 72, cause of death.
Senility and exhaustion.
So he'd gone senile?
Yes.
Did that have the same meaning back then as it does now?
Yes, it would have meant that he couldn't care for himself.
When and where he died? Workhouse infirmary. So could he have been working at the workhouse?
No, if he had been in the workhouse. They call them inmates. He would have been treated slightly better than the people who were just inmates in the workhouse. What is quite nice about this record is that his son, Clifford, was actually in attendance. Clifford could simply have registered his death, but in attendance means that he was actually there
when it happened.
Yeah.
So he was still... He may not have lived with his children, but they were still very much around him.
It certainly looks that way.
Oh, no, how sad. Even though I don't physically know James Gretton, I've become really attached to him in a really short period of time. He seemed to have had a life of ups and downs. I mean, it does seem apparent that he always had his children around him. And he had love. The one thing that I wanted to find within this was that we had solid, authentic roots in this brilliant city that I absolutely love. And James Gretton has given me that. This is where we're from. We are true Brummies. I want to know where the rest of my family come from. Because it's not just one bloodline, right? They're sprouting off everywhere. So where are we all from here?
Emma is back home in Hertfordshire. Her dad's done some more research into his side of the family.
Okay, so hi Em, I've been doing a bit more digging around for you and I found a certificate for my great-grandma, Margaret Curwen. She is your 2 times great-grandma and she was born in Dublin. Margaret Curwen, born November 1862 to Michael Curwen and Harriet Fowler in Dublin. Better go to Dublin then.
Emma now wants to find out about her Irish ancestors on her father's side, Margaret Curwen, and her parents Harriet Fowler and Michael Curwen.
I've hitched a ride on a ferry because now I'm on the trail of my great-great-grandmother, a woman called Margaret Curwen. I had absolutely no idea that we had any Irish on my dad's side. I really don't know what I'm hoping for at the other end. I think in the whole process, I've tried to go into it having no expectations.
Emma's heading to the Registry of Deeds, which holds records dating back to the 18th century. She's meeting genealogist John Grenham.
Emma.
Hi, John.
Hi. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you too.
Come on in.
Thank you. John, so far, I know that my great-great-grandmother was called Margaret Curwen and she was born in Dublin.
OK, well, that's a great start. Here's the record of the marriage of her parents.
So on the 22nd day of October 1861, Michael Curwen married Harriet Fowler.
If you look at the surnames there, Curwen and Fowler,
Yeah.
Curwen is a typical Irish, Gaelic Irish surname, comes from O'Keir Duan, meaning grandson of the dark-haired fellow. Okay, so it's a good Gaelic
solid Irish name.
That's a bullseye for Gaelic there.
Okay.
All right. Whereas
Okay, good.
Fowler is obviously an English surname.
EastEnders,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So are we mixing here?
I think we are. He's from a Catholic background and she's from a Protestant background. That's what I would read it as.
Okay.
I think if you see as well, the marriage is taking place in the registrar's office.
Yeah.
And the reason for a registrar's office marriage or registry office marriage is, at this period at least, almost always because it's a mixed marriage.
My mum is Catholic and my dad is Church of England, but they married and I don't think that was ever a problem. But that was in the 60s.
Yeah.
How would it have been looked on in 1861?
It would have been hard. They were going against his church and her church.
Yeah.
This is almost certainly a love match. This is not an arranged marriage, and that's what this looks like to me.
Father's name. Oh, so his dad's name was Michael Curwen as well. Senior.
The groom's father. Okay.
And he was a marble mason. Mm-hmm. And Harriet's father was Richard Fowler, and he was a gentleman. What does it mean if your rank or professional is a gentleman?
The idea is that a gentleman doesn't have to work for his living, as it were.
Do you know anything else about Richard Fowler, gentleman?
Actually, I found a marriage announcement in the Leinster Express newspaper from 1835, and here it is.
1835. In Dublin, Richard Fowler, Esquire of Dunlavin, County Wicklow, to Harriet. So Richard Fowler was an Esquire of Dunlavin. What does that actually mean? I mean, I know of it and I've heard of it, but...
Well, Esquire there is interesting. He's a gentleman in her marriage record.
Yeah.
And he's an esquire at the time of his own marriage. Esquire was not exactly a precise label. In theory, it means that he had property, that he was part of the landed gentry, as it were.
So do you know what type of land he had or how much or how little?
I found something here in the Registry of Deeds. I have uncovered marriage articles of Richard's parents. So let me just go and get that for you now.
OK, thank you. These books are absolutely incredible.
So,
terrified to go anywhere near them.
This book is probably 250 years old, maybe a bit more.
John, don't rip it.
There we go. All right. Now.
Right. What in the world does that say?
As it so
Oh, you
happens, We have a transcript.
Oh, good.
Okay.
Okay.
And here you are.
Marriage settlement, 1790. Made it to 1700. Yay. What is a marriage settlement?
It's an agreement made between two parties, two families, who are going to marry into each other.
Okay.
It's made between, you can see Richard Fowler.
Yeah.
That's Richard Fowler Senior.
Yeah. Richard Fowler and Abigail Fowler, formerly Alcock. So these are my five-time great-grandparents.
Great-grandparents. Okay.
Part of the lands of, how do you pronounce that?
Boherboy.
Boherboy, commonly called the Boggy Meadow. Was it really boggy?
I would imagine probably was.
Got to get its name from somewhere, right? In the whole 43 acres. So 43 acres is what they have.
It's a middling-sized holding.
It sounds a lot.
It maybe to our ears.
To us.
Yeah, but I mean, for example, the major landowner in the area would have had tens of thousands of acres owned outright.
Right, okay. So he's doing all right?
He's doing all right, but not spectacular.
He's not flying high?
Yeah.
Okay.
Exactly.
Emma has discovered that her 5 times great-grandfather, Richard Fowler Senior, was a Protestant landholder from the town of Dunlavin at the end of the 18th century. At the time, fewer than 5,000 Protestant families owned nearly all of the land in Ireland. The vast majority of the population were Catholic, but they had been excluded from land ownership. Most worked as labourers for landholders like Richard Fowler.
And what was Dunlavin like at the end of the 1700s?
It was a small country town about 40 miles south of Dublin. It was quite a particular place in that it was majority Protestant.
Okay.
The fact that it was majority Protestant made it stand out in this island in a sea of Catholicism.
Right.
At the end of the 18th century.
Were they not very well liked?
There was a certain amount of sectarian tension, put it like that.
Should I go to Dunlavin?
Yes, is the short answer.
I'm really surprised that someone's a gentleman in my family. Not because they're not like, all the men in my family are gentlemen, but like a gentleman of old times, you know, an esquire, someone who kind of had land. I expected working class grafters. I didn't expect a gentleman. I am on my way to Dunlavin to see if I can find out anything else about Richard Fowler and his family. When I was speaking to John yesterday, he mentioned that it was a big Protestant community and that there was tension. So I'm quite interested in finding out what it was and why.
Emma's meeting genealogist Nicola Morris.
Nicola.
Hi, Emma. It's
Hi.
lovely to meet you.
How you doing?
And welcome to Dunlavin.
Thank you. So I've been hearing that this is where some of my roots lie.
Right.
With a man called Richard Fowler, who is my 5 times great-grandfather.
Mm-hmm. So the land that he had, which is Boherboy, Brewers Hill and Boggy Meadow, is outside of the town. So as well as his land, he had an inn here. Now, unfortunately, we don't know which building it was that was his at the time.
Okay.
What we do know is that the Dunlavin Inn here was here in 1790s. So a contemporary of Richard Fowler's, if not his own pub. So should we go inside and I've got some more information on Richard for you?
Mate, I'd love to, thank you.
I have some documents here that record Richard Fowler. So the first record that we find, the first reference that we find to him is in November 1797. And this is in the Union Star newspaper, which was a newspaper of the United Irishmen. It was very much a propaganda paper.
The Society of United Irishmen was founded in 1791. At the time, Ireland was ruled by the British monarch, George III. The United Irishmen wanted to establish an independent Irish republic. This appealed to many Irish Catholics who wanted self-rule.
Somewhere along here is a reference to...
OK, Fowler, a distiller in Dunlavin, a notorious informer and one of those privileged murderers, Orangemen. Wow.
So the Union Star was a United Irishman newspaper. They would have used this paper, which was handed out, to defame people. And so what they've done here is that they've accused Fowler.
What is that? What's Orangemen?
The Orange Order was established in the 1790s in Ireland as an organisation. Its membership came from Protestants. And its purpose, I suppose, was to defend the loyalism to the British Crown at that particular time. Richard Fowler would have been considered to be a loyalist.
What about the murderous bit?
This statement about Fowler very likely comes from an incident that Fowler was involved with. And it was actually reported on in a newspaper called The Press. So this would be a far less of a propaganda paper than the Union Star would be. A little bit more balanced reporting in it.
In the morning of the 20th of October last, between the hours of 1 and 2, Lieutenant H of the Antrim Militia, Richard Fowler of Dunlavin, and Thomas Butler of County Kildare went to the house of Michael Egan and, having opened the door, desired him and his son, Thomas Egan, to come down out of their beds. They were not even allowed to dress themselves, and on the very instant that they appeared, they were knocked down and received many desperate stabs. Would a stab back then be the same as one now?
They were using bayonets, so, I mean, yes, it would have been.
Naked and bleeding as they were, on daring to complain of such treatment, were again knocked down and beaten in a most unmerciful manner. Should I keep reading or not?
If you want to.
On their arrival at the guardhouse, they were again stabbed with bayonets. After having nearly killed the father, they dragged the son to a private part of the guardhouse and, by every kind of cruelty and torture they could invent, endeavoured to extract information from him. That's horrific. And surely they can't. Or they wouldn't have reported it if it were not true.
Yeah. The case did go to court in the following months. And actually, Richard Fowler was charged. So he was certainly held accountable for his role in this.
The United Irishmen were a banned organisation, so their activities took place in secret. Loyalists feared they were planning a rebellion and turned on anyone suspected of belonging to the United Irishmen. Many were imprisoned, tortured, or executed.
Do you know what happened to the two men, the Egans?
They did survive, so they weren't killed on that night. One of the reasons that they would have been targeted is because they were blacksmiths. And so around the country, blacksmiths were targeted simply because they had the ability to make weapons. So they made pikes, which were used as weapons.
It's hard to make sense of it. But what type of man do you think Richard was? Because it's hard, after reading this, to think he was a good man. But then, because there's so much going on, you can't make sense of it.
No. And it's very hard to excuse or justify what he did.
Yeah.
But I think he was very much caught up in what was happening in this area at the time. The United Irishmen were posing a very serious threat to the stability of the country. An uprising is planned, and that's why I think Richard Fowler was being such threatened and panic.
How can you
Read his
defend
mind.
that by doing that to somebody? I felt quite sick when I was reading it because it's so detailed. You know, it didn't really leave much to the imagination. And I could understand every word of it. And it just was so the polar opposite to what I expected. And I was speechless, if I'm honest. I come from what I know of, from good people. And I feel like I found somebody who maybe wasn't so good in Richard Fowler. People acted on instinct, I would imagine, and panic and fear and not knowing what was going to happen to them or their families or their futures. And when you think about it in that respect, if it were me and I didn't know what was going to happen to my family, I would panic too. But I wouldn't panic so much as to physically hurt somebody. What is incredible and fills me with more hope is that 2 generations later, Richard Fowler's granddaughter, Harriet Fowler, a Protestant, married a Catholic, Michael Kirwan. So 2 generations before, everybody was at loggerheads. 2 generations later, they marry. And it's not a marriage of convenience, we don't believe. It was a true match of love. That can't have been easy to have done that. It must have been frowned upon.
Emma's 3 times great-grandmother, Harriet Fowler, was married to Michael Kirwan. His father was also called Michael Kirwan, and he was a marble mason. Emma now wants to find out more about him.
So I am just going to search marble mason. Let's see. Ooh, that sounds right. Dictionary of Irish Architects. Michael Kirwan, stonecutter and marble mason of Dublin. His altar for the Franciscan Church in Henry Street, Limerick, was described in the Catholic Directory for 1848 as one of the most splendid pieces of Irish manufacture. So maybe I should go to Limerick. I really needed something like this at the end of today, I think. Well, not I think, I know I did. I was feeling a little bit defeated, and now I feel positive again. I don't know what to expect or what to find. All I kind of know about what he made was written in the Dictionary of Irish Architects, and that it sounds like a thing of beauty. So I can't wait to see it.
Emma's now in Limerick, on the west coast of Ireland. She's discovered that the Franciscan Church no longer exists. But she's on her way to see another of Michael Kirwan's altarpieces at nearby St Saviour's, where she's meeting historian Caroline McGee.
Hi, Caroline.
How are you?
I'm really good. How are you?
Good to meet you.
Nice to meet you
Come
too.
inside.
Oh my gosh. It's
Pretty amazing,
isn't it?
Yes. It's really beautiful.
How is that? Everything I'm seeing is by him.
The The big backdrop that you see there, that's Michael's work. The carving on the pillars at the front here, that's Michael's work. And it's pretty impressive. So I have some reports about it that'll tell us a little bit more about it.
Yeah, I'd love to find out. Is there anything about him?
There's lots about him, yes.
Okay.
Lots of interesting things. So what we have here is a newspaper article that was an interim report on the building of this extension to the church.
Sometime since we called attention to a magnificent altar in varied coloured marbles manufactured by Mr. Michael Cohen of 17 Bolton Street for a Catholic church in the country. We then remarked on the extreme beauty of the design and the elegance of the workmanship.
Exactly.
I think they're absolutely right. And stated that nothing better of its kind could be produced in any other country. Wow. I mean, they like him, right?
That's a superb testimonial to see him.
Yeah. The general effect of this altar is exceedingly fine and should be seen by those who have any doubt of Irishmen producing at home as good specimens of art as they are known to produce in other countries, where their genius is appreciated and rewarded.
Well,
are they calling him a genius? An Irish genius?
An Irish genius, exactly. Yes. It's a very Victorian description, isn't it? But it's just lovely, and it does show you how well regarded he was.
They love him.
They do. And now you love him too.
I love Michael Cohen.
So Michael was creating altars probably from the early part of the century, probably around the 1830s. And by then, Irish craftsmen had only begun to start doing this kind of work because Catholicism was very much an underground religion. There were a lot of restrictions on Catholics.
For a century, Catholics had been outlawed from practicing their religion in public, so few Catholic churches were built. But a series of reforms in the early 19th century allowed Catholics to worship openly, sparking a revival in church building and creating a demand for Michael Cohen's altarpieces.
And by 1866, Michael is a very successful businessman. He has a workshop and a showroom in Dublin. So very big business, and by this time, a really good example of how a Catholic might have achieved a lot during the 19th century. So this article is from 1851. It's to fill in Michael's story for you because, as you can see, it's a very important piece.
Manufacture movement. So what was the manufacture movement?
So this was a group that came together to promote the sale of Irish goods.
The secretary handed in 10 shillings and said he felt peculiar pleasure in proposing one of the most patriotic of Irishmen, Mr. Michael Cohen. He had the talent to wrest from the hands of foreign artists an important branch, the manufacturing of marble altars. So he's as good as any foreign artist.
He's as good as any foreign artist. And so Michael became kind of a poster boy for the achievements of Irish Catholics, Irish artisan craftsmen, and he was very, very important to the Irish manufacture movement because they thought he was a real patriot for promoting Irish goods at a time when the church furnishing industry was really dominated by overseas suppliers.
Flying the flag for Irish craftsmanship.
Absolutely.
Is there more to find out?
Well, he was based in Dublin, and so I think you should go back to Dublin.
It's overwhelming, I think, to walk in to such a gorgeous building in itself, but then know that the centrepiece of that building, and a building with a lot of history, was made by your four-time great-grandfather. He crafted that and touched it with his own hands. He seemed dedicated to his craft and dedicated to his country and kind of wanted to show Ireland in the best light possible. And that, to me, seems like a good man. And I needed to find a good man.
To find out more about Michael Kirwan, Emma's back in Dublin. She's visiting Trinity College, where she's arranged to meet historian Patrick Gagan.
Patrick.
Hi, Emma.
Lovely to meet you.
Lovely to meet you.
This is incredible.
All the books that you need.
I'm trying to track down as much as I can about Michael Kirwan, who is my 4 times great-grandfather. So can you tell me any more about him?
Apart from all his brilliant work making these marble altars, he was very politically active, and he was certainly one of the leaders of the trade union movement because he was campaigning for workers' rights. And he became close to a person called Daniel O'Connell, who in Ireland is known as the Liberator.
Daniel O'Connell is one of the greatest figures in Irish history, remembered for his role in winning civil rights for Catholics and fighting for Irish self-rule.
Would they have known each other?
They were of different classes. Michael Kirwan is a working class hero. Daniel O'Connell came from a much more privileged background. But they would have met at political meetings. They would have seen each other speak, and they would have been aware of the other person.
But they didn't always see eye to eye. In the late 1830s, Daniel O'Connell made some controversial speeches attacking the trades unions. He criticised their practices and even spoke out against the idea of trade unionism. Michael Kirwan was one of the first to stand up for the workers.
Here's the Freeman's Journal from the 1st of December, 1837.
OK. At a meeting of the operative stonecutters of the city to disabuse the public mind on the unwarrantable charges made by Mr. O'Connell against the trades of Dublin generally, moved by Michael Kirwan.
The fact that Michael Kirwan is proposing one of the motions shows the level of influence he had in the movement. It shows that he was one of the leaders of it, and he's one of the key people who's really driving this defence of their actions. He was prepared to stand up for himself, and he was prepared to stand up against the most charismatic and the most successful and the most dominant Irish political figure of his day.
So did that reflect badly then on Michael Kirwan because he'd challenged somebody that was held in such high regard?
I think it reflected worse on Daniel O'Connell himself, because O'Connell ended up losing popularity in Dublin because of these attacks on the workers, and for a time he was booed on the streets of Dublin. He even considered giving up his political career and retiring. So I think in a way Michael Kirwan had the better of the argument. It showed huge courage, and it showed a certain kind of spiky character that he wasn't going to be pushed around.
So what happened? Did they resolve their differences, or did they carry on fighting?
They did resolve their difficulties, and here's good proof of it, because it's an article in the Freeman's Journal in October 1862.
The O'Connell National Statue, what's that?
So Daniel O'Connell died in 1847,
yeah.
And 15 years later, they wanted to erect a national statue in his honour in the capital city of Ireland, in Dublin. And if you just look all the way down...
Michael Kirwan, 17 Bolton Street. He's there! Yes. So, all of these names, Michael included, obviously, he helped get the statue built. Does that mean he put his own money in, or helped kind of raise funds for the...
He did both. He put his own money towards it, and he also showed that he was publicly behind this national statue. Michael Kirwan clearly was hugely respected, or otherwise he wouldn't be taking such a prominent role on this committee. He carried a lot of influence because he was the champion of the workers.
So he was a good man?
A very good man, a strong man,
good.
And someone who was prepared to stand up and fight for his beliefs.
And is it still standing? Can I go and see it?
Yes, you can. It's on our main national street in Dublin, O'Connell Street, the street that's named in Daniel O'Connell's honour. And it's one of the great landmarks in Dublin.
Oh, my goodness.
While you go and see it, here's something that you might want to read on your own.
Thank you so much.
It's been a pleasure.
It really is an incredible, incredible monument. And I think what I obviously love most is the fact that Michael Kerwin was one of the people responsible for making it happen. I kind of feel like I can take a bit of the credit for it. Death of Mr. Michael Kerwin. I know he's dead, but obviously I didn't really want to read about his death. Mr. Kerwin, we believe, was the first to establish the marble altar building in Ireland, and in many of the Catholic churches in this city and the provinces, excellent specimens of his work bear testimony to his talent and industry in the art. I mean, that's just incredible. I suppose this is kind of the first time I've really heard it, that they believe he was the first to establish the marble altar building in Ireland. So it began with him, pretty much. He was respected for his skill and integrity, for his professionalism, and by the general community, who esteemed him for his virtues and patriotism. I don't know why I'm getting upset about somebody that lived 150 odd years ago. I think when we went down the trail of the Fowlers and I saw that there was a gentleman, I was quite excited because I'm from a working class family, so I thought that would be something quite different. And then that turned out not so well. So to then go on the path of the Kerwins and find a hard worker from a working class background that did really well, that's what I think is parallel to my family. What a fantastic man Michael Kerwin seemed to be. That is somebody that I'm immensely proud of.
Who Do You Think You Are takes a short break for the World Athletics, but don't worry, it'll be back week after next.